I want to tell you something that only a specific vantage point produces, not the vantage point of the financial analyst, or the investment advisor, or the personal finance author, all of whom have valuable things to say about money, and none of whom have access to the particular data I am about to give you. The vantage point I am describing is the vantage point of the priest who buries people, who stands at the graveside, who sits with the family in the days before, who receives the confessions in the final weeks, who holds the hands in the last hours, and who has done this, not occasionally, not rarely, but consistently, as the primary work of a vocation across 20 years of active ministry. I have buried approximately 400 people. I say approximately because I stopped counting at some point, not from indifference, but because the number became less important than the pattern. And the pattern, the specific, recurring, consistent, universal pattern that I have observed across 400 human lives reaching their completion, is what I want to give you today. Not a list, not a collection of regrets. One thing, the one financial thing that has appeared, with a consistency that I can only describe as structural rather than coincidental, across every economic circumstance, every cultural background, every level of financial accomplishment and financial struggle, every age and every era of ministry, the wealthy and the poor, the financially disciplined and the financially chaotic, the faithful who tithed every week for 40 years, and the ones who hadn't been inside a church in decades, all 400 of them, the same thing. And I believe, with the conviction that comes from 400 data points rather than from theological theory, that the same thing is true of the person watching this video. That the specific financial regret I am about to name is either already forming in your financial life or is in the process of being avoided right now by the specific decision that the end of every one of those 400 lives was waiting for someone to make while there was still time to make it. Welcome. I am the Millionaire Priest. And today, I am giving you what 400 burials taught me about the one financial thing every single person wishes they had done differently. Before I name it, I want to establish why the claim of universality is credible, because the claim is a strong one. The same financial regret across 400 people who differed in almost every other conceivable dimension. It requires explanation. And the explanation is this. The universality of this regret is not about the quantity of the financial lives involved or the specific circumstances they navigated. It is about the specific dimension of the financial life that every human being shares, regardless of their economic circumstances. The dimension of what they did with what they had toward the people and purposes that mattered most to them. Not the Solomon was the wealthiest man in the ancient world. He did not pray for money. He asked for one thing, and wealth followed as the consequence. I am the Millionaire Priest, and I have spent 20 years documenting what Solomon knew. 2 books, The Confession Code, The 7 Financial Sins No Priest Will Name from the Pulpit, and The Priest's Ledger, the 40-year method for reading wealth before it arrives. One for where you are, one for where you are going. Both available now through the link in the description and the pinned comment below. Investment strategy, not the retirement planning, not the wealth management approach, the specific, personal, relational dimension of what the financial resources that passed through their hands were given toward, or not given toward, while the giving was still possible. This is the dimension that is universal, and this is the dimension where the regret lives. Before I name the thing, I want to pause here because what I am about to say is connected directly to my 2 books. The Confession Code, The 7 Financial Sins. No priest will name from the pulpit was built from this observation. The specific condition I am about to name appears in that book as one of the 7, described with the full theological and pastoral weight it carries. The Confession Code is available right now through the link in the description and the pinned comment. I also have a second book, The Priest's Ledger, which I will return to before this teaching ends. And now, the one financial thing. The one financial thing that every single one of those 400 people wished they had done differently is this. They wished they had given more sooner. not necessarily more in total quantity. Many of them had been generous people, some of them extraordinarily so. Sooner. The specific generosity that was always deferred, the specific person they had always intended to help, the specific cause they had always believed in, the specific gift they had been meaning to make for years, the specific financial act of love they had been carrying in their heart as an intention and had found reason after reason to place one more season away from execution. And at the end, in the room, in the bed, with the hands that could no longer write the check or make the call or open the wallet, it was still there, unacted, exactly as it had been when the intention first formed. And what they experienced in the face of that specific unacted generosity was not primarily guilt. Guilt is about having done wrong. What they experienced was grief, the grief of the person who always intended to do right and never quite got there, who was always one more season of financial stability away from the right moment that never became the right moment. The grief of the good intention that ran out of time. I want to be precise about what I am claiming, because the precision matters. I am not claiming that 400 people died wishing they had given away more of their money in the aggregate. The financial lives of the 400 were varied enough that such a blanket claim would be false. Some of them had given generously throughout their lives and still carried this regret. Some of them had given very little and carried it too. The distinction is not between generous people and ungenerous ones. It is between the person who gave toward the specific people and purposes they were moved to give toward in the specific moments when the moving was strongest, and the person who deferred those specific givings until the right moment, which was always arriving and never quite here. The wealthy man who died with significant assets and substantial philanthropic history still wished he had given to that specific person, that nephew who needed help at 25 and asked and was gently redirected to build character through his own effort 20 years before. The poor woman who had almost nothing still wished she had given more of the little she had to that neighbor whose situation was harder than her own and whose need she had recognized and rationalized away. The middle-income family man who had been responsible and disciplined and financially prudent throughout his entire financial life still wished he had been less careful at one specific moment with the specific person whose need coincided with the specific moment when his own financial situation was not quite stable enough to justify the generosity his heart was pointing toward. The specific, named, known, identified generosity that was deferred. This is the universal content of the financial regret, not the management of money. The movement of it toward the people and purposes the heart pointed toward in the moments when the pointing was clearest. Proverbs 3:27 and 28 contains the specific warning that 400 deathbeds have confirmed. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, "Come back tomorrow, and I'll give it," when you now have it with you. Come back tomorrow. This is the deferred generosity in its precise biblical formulation. I have it. The need is present. The person is in front of me. But come back tomorrow. Tomorrow, when the financial situation is clearer. Tomorrow, when the immediate expense is resolved. Tomorrow, when I can give without the anxiety of the month-end approaching. Tomorrow. And the proverb says, do not say this. Not because tomorrow is always too late. Sometimes tomorrow is genuinely the right timing, but because the habit of come back tomorrow, practiced across the financial life as the default response to every specific generosity impulse, produces the deathbed grief of the unacted intention. Come back tomorrow that you never said today, because today the need was present and the means were sufficient, and the only thing missing was the decision. Now I want to give you the 5 forms this deferred generosity takes, because in the 400 it did not always look the same, and I want to help you recognize which form is most present in your financial life right now. The first form is the deferred gift of provision, the financial need of a specific person that you are aware of and that you have the capacity to address, that you have been waiting to address until your own financial situation is more settled. The nephew at 25, the colleague whose business is failing, the parent who's the wealthiest man in the ancient world. He did not pray for money. He asked for one thing, and wealth followed as the consequence. I am the millionaire priest, and I have spent 20 years documenting what Solomon knew. 2 books, the Confession Code, the 7 financial sins no priest will name from the pulpit, and the priest's ledger, the 40-year method for reading wealth before it arrives, one for where you are, one for where you are going. Both available now through the link in the description and the pinned comment below. Retirement is insufficient. The friend whose medical debt is consuming them. You know the need. You have some capacity. And the stability you are waiting for before you give is always one more season away. This is the most common form, the most recognized at the deathbed, and the most painful, because the person in need was present and available at the moment of the maximum moving, and the moment of maximum moving passed without the action. The second form is the deferred gift of investment, the specific person in whom you believed and whose work you always intended to support financially when the time was right, the young entrepreneur whose vision you recognized, the ministry you watched develop and believed in, the creative whose work you valued and meant to patronize when your own financial life had more margin. This form of deferred generosity is less visible than the provision gift because it doesn't have the urgency of an obvious need. It has the urgency of a season, the season when a specific investment in a specific person would have made a specific difference that later, larger gifts could not replicate. And at the end, what is grieved is not the money not given, but the moment not seized. The specific window of maximum impact that opened and closed while the intention was still forming. The third form is the deferred gift of resolution, the financial wrong not corrected, the debt not repaid, the financial obligation toward a specific person that was always acknowledged internally and never addressed externally. This form appears with significant frequency in the confessional, and I have addressed this in the teaching on the unresolved vow and the open account in the covenant ledger. But at the deathbed, the form it takes is not theological. It is relational. The person lying in the bed is not thinking about the covenant mechanism. They are thinking about the face of the person to whom the resolution was owed, and the grief of the unresolved financial obligation is the grief of the relationship that carried the weight of the unaddressed thing across all the years since. The fourth form is the deferred gift of family provision, the financial provision toward the next generation that was always planned for the future and never quite structured in the present. Not the inheritance. Most people think about the inheritance, at least eventually. The intentional, deliberate, while I am alive provision for the financial formation of the next generation, the college fund that was always going to be open next year, the conversation about money that was always going to happen when the children were older, the financial wisdom that was always going to be transmitted when the right moment presented itself. This form is perhaps the most widespread of the 5, because the financial formation of the next generation is something most people intend and fewer people execute in the specific, deliberate, while there is still time way that the end of a life makes clear was always possible and was never done. The 5th form, and this is the one that is most specific to the community of faith that this channel serves, is the deferred gift toward God, the vow not fulfilled. The covenant financial commitment made in a moment of pressing need and quietly set aside when the need was resolved. The specific offering that was always going to come when the financial situation stabilized. The extraordinary act of covenant generosity that was always one season away from the right moment not the regular tithe, which most of these people maintained. The specific, above-ordinary, covenant-sealing financial act toward God that had been forming in the heart for years as the specific expression of gratitude or faith or repentance that the situation seemed to call for, and the end of the life with that specific act still unperformed. That is the fifth form of the deferred generosity that 400 deathbeds have confirmed is the most universal financial regret of the human life. Now I want to address the specific pastoral question this raises, because I am very aware that the generosity culture of some Christian communities has caused real financial harm, and I do not want this teaching to be used to pressure people toward financial decisions that genuinely exceed their capacity. Not every generosity impulse is from God. Not every moving toward giving is the covenant moving I am describing. The test, the simple, practical, honest test, is time. How long has this specific generosity impulse been present? If it arrived yesterday in the emotional heat of a compelling appeal and will likely be forgotten by next week, this is not the impulse I am describing. The impulse I am describing has been present for months, for years, has returned repeatedly, has been there in the quiet moments when no one was asking, has survived multiple seasons of deliberate deferral, and continues to resurface with the specific quality of something that belongs to the person's financial calling rather than their financial emotion. That impulse, the one that has been deferred through multiple seasons and continues to return, is the one that the 400 deathbeds confirm is still there at the end, unacted, grieved. I want to give you the priest's ledger connection now, because this is the moment in the teaching when the 40-year view becomes most relevant. The priest's ledger, the 40-year method for reading wealth before it arrives. The deferred generosity I have been describing is not simply a moral failure or a spiritual weakness. It is a financial miscalculation, the most consistently confirmed financial miscalculation in my 20 years of pastoral practice. Because the generosity that is deferred does not simply wait for the better moment. It compounds in the other direction. The year of deferral becomes 2 years. The 2 years become a decade. The decade becomes the financial biography. And the person who reviews that biography at the end finds that the specific moments of maximum opportunity for the specific generosity they were called to practice were earlier than the later moments they kept waiting for. The priest's ledger develops the framework for reading this arc, for seeing the windows of maximum generosity opportunity in the financial life before they have closed. It is available now through the link in the description and the pinned comment alongside the confession code. Both are there for you. I want to close with this. Somewhere in the financial life of the person watching this video, there is a specific generosity that has been deferred, a specific person, a specific cause, a specific act, a specific gift. That has been present in the financial heart as an intention for longer than one season. That has survived multiple seasons of come back tomorrow and continues to return with the same quality and the same direction. And the 400 people whose burials I have stood over would, if they could speak to you from that side of the final accounting, give you the same message with the same voice. Do not come back tomorrow. Not because tomorrow is always too late, but because the tomorrow they kept coming back to was always arriving and never quite here. And the grief is not the grief of having given wrongly. It is the grief of the right giving that ran out of time. Leave a comment below. Tell me the specific generosity you have been deferring. You do not need to name the person or the amount. Name the form, the provision gift, the investment gift, the resolution gift, the family provision, the covenant gift. Name the form, and let this community stand as witness to the decision you are making today, not to defer it one more season. I read every comment. If you are new here, welcome to the Millionaire Priest. Subscribe and hit the bell. Every week, we go this deep at the place where faith and finances meet. And there is much more coming. Do not say come back tomorrow when you have it today. The 400 taught me this, and I am giving it to you while there is still time for it to make a difference. Open the hand, now, before the moment that was always available becomes the moment that no longer is. Amen.